Well, hello there, happy innovators. How you guys doing today, huh? How you doing? You having a good day? I'm just kind of sitting here, once again, pretty early in the morning, watching the sun come up over the trees. And, it's been rather mild weather here lately, so it's not so snowy and not so cold, really. It's just kind of chilled out, like I am right now. And got my coffee here and just kind of ready to talk, But there's really nothing like sunrises, man. Well, I guess sunsets, those are kind of similar, but there's something about watching the sun come up as opposed to the sun coming down. So, I wanted to talk to you guys today. I just wrapped up a video for a cover version of a song by a group called 3 Doors Down. It's called Kryptonite. I'm not sure if it's a worldwide hit or it was a worldwide hit when it came out back in the mid to late 1990s. I think it was actually around the year 2000 the song came out. And it was a big hit here in the United States. And I'm not the world's biggest 3 Doors Down fan. But for some reason, that song Kryptonite, it's one of those songs like when it comes on the radio or, something like that, I don't change the channel. Like I've always kind of listened to it. I liked it, And so I decided to cover it, and I just finished a video for it last week and get ready to release it. So you'll be seeing that very soon. And I've been working on a lot of videos, actually. So those are coming down the pike real soon. And I'm kind of excited. I have a lot of really good music that I'm getting ready to release now. And, I'm getting a little anxious because I want this music out there. I want to get it out there. And hopefully, when I do that, you guys will like it too, Anyway, there's a group, that I like. They're called the Young Gods. YOUNGGODS. The Young Gods. And a long time ago, a friend of mine had given me one of their CDs. He said, he didn't want it or something, and he gave it to me. And wow, this record, this CD of like 10 songs, just totally changed everything for me. The album was called Only Heaven, and it was just so different than anything else that I had heard up until that point. And honestly, ever since I first heard their music on that CD, there's a part of me as a songwriter / musician, whatever you want to call me, that has always kind of been chasing what the Young Gods did on that album. And I've been a fan of theirs now for a long time, probably about 20 years now. And so just the other night, I typed them in, in Google search, and I found some recent live performances from the Young Gods. And, they've never really stopped. They took a break for a while, but they came back, they made a new album and everything. And, they're just a 3-piece band. 3 guys, like a keyboard player, a drummer, who's very good, and a singer / guitar player. And, I was watching their concert, their live performance, and I was just so shocked at how good they still sound. And, these guys in this band, they're all really like older gentlemen. They're older guys, and they have white hair and gray hair, but they're still getting up on the stage and they're still doing what they do. And, back in the day when I first was turned on to them, at least in my opinion, their sounds that they were generating were like really kind of edgy and really kind of like trippy and interesting and unconventional. Like they were different their approach to song structures and arrangements and soundscapes. Like, they were just really different and really creative. Okay? And, you know, their new material, okay, the new stuff that they're writing is still really good. I mean, it's still really good. And it got me to thinking, and this is why I'm talking about it today, is like there's that notion that I've heard over the course of my lifetime that, you know, rock and roll music is really like for the kids, you know, it's a young man's game, okay? And I hear things like, you know, rock and roll is dead, the guitar is dead, like, you know, I've heard that several times over my lifetime. And, you know, whoever says that, whenever they say it, they're always wrong, you know? The guitar rock or whatever will never go away. It'll never end. But the Young Gods got me to thinking about all that. Now, okay, the theory that I have, or the opinion that I have as of today, the last day of January 2020, okay, the first month of 2020 is wrapping up. And here's the conclusion that I've come to. Rock and roll is not dead, okay? And the Young Gods are a good example of a band that would be like proof of that to me. Like, if you want to hear pop music, okay, like cheesy pop music, you know, not all of it's cheesy, I guess. Some of it's okay. All right, I can tolerate it. But you know, you go to the young kids, like that's what they do. You know, they do the stuff that's like kitsch and, you know, popular, like today, you know, like right now, popular pop music, right? But if you want to find music that's really on the edge, the cutting edge, and really different and out there, you're going to want to turn to a group like the Young Gods, right? Because these are guys that are like in their 60s, their 50s or 60s, that are still doing it. Like, they're still writing material, they're still learning new technologies and mastering them and applying it to their songwriting. I mean, I can't express that enough, really, like how cool that is to me. You know, like there's something about watching an older band do what they do, you know, like do what made them famous, and they're still doing it well, and they're not stuck back in the early days of their career, you know, rehashing their old songs and live performances. It's like they have just continued on their path. You know, they've continued to innovate, learn new technology, make even better music than they used to, because I think that technology serves bands that are innovative. So when someone says to me that rock and roll is dead, I'm kind of like, no, it's not dead. If you want to find good, real rock and roll, like the new face of rock and roll, it's not with the little kids. You know, it's not with pop music. You have to go out to the fringes where you find bands like the Young Gods. And, you know, the Young Gods are probably around the same age as like the Rolling Stones or U2 or, you know, any bands you can think of that are like, you know, stadium bands, right? And world famous. But there's also room, okay, in this world of music for bands like the Young Gods. You know, these guys who, even though their stage is much smaller than the Rolling Stones, and their audience is much smaller, you know, than U2, they do still have, okay, they do still have a worldwide audience, right? And The difference is, okay, the main difference is that they're making better music than U2 or the Rolling Stones, you know? I mean, of course, that's all subjective, right? It's my opinion, but I don't think you could really deny it when you listen to or when you watch their live performances from maybe about a year ago, you know, the stuff they have posted online. It's just fantastic to watch, you know? These three dudes on this really small stage with a decent-sized audience, you know? They have a decent light setup and everything, probably really great sound because they were recorded fantastic. I mean, it just translates to tape, you know, on your headphones when you're watching it on YouTube or something. It just translates so well, you know, their live performance. And I don't know, it just really kind of hit me really hard. It really did. I liked them already, like I said, but it's like, damn, they're still going and they're still doing this amazing music, you know? And I could probably talk about it all day, and I won't do that, but it's like, I guess the conclusion is that rock and roll is not dead, you know? And if you want to find really innovative, cool, kind of new music, don't necessarily look to the younger generations. You know, a change has taken place in rock and roll history, I guess, in my opinion, right? Where ageism doesn't really apply anymore. You know, rock and roll has been around long enough, and even music like industrial music and like the newer genres of music that emerged back in the 90s, like the Young Gods, you know, they've been around long enough to have evolved, and music has changed so much over the past 20 years, especially with technology. Like, you know, that's where the magic is, you know, out on the fringes, you know? And I guess I'm kind of saying it that way to remind myself, you know, that there is still a lot of really great music coming out. You know, people tend to make comments like that about music when you are kind of scanning, you know, the internet for music of bands that came out a long time ago. You'll read comments like, oh, this is when music was good, and there's no good music coming out anymore. That's not true. That's a myth. It's BS. There's a lot of really great music coming out right now. And some of it is even from, you know, the younger generations. But if you ask me, okay, which no one has, but I don't care. If you ask me, the real magic happens out on the edges, out on the periphery of what's popular. You know, there's plenty of fantastic songwriting going on as we speak, and it's usually being done by, you know, these guys with white hair and gray hair. I mean, they've been doing it for so long, right? I mean, there's something to be said for that. You know, that, you know, they feel that what they're doing is important enough to continue on. Like, they really need to be doing it. It's obviously, at this point, for the Young Gods, it's probably not about the money. You know, it's really probably not. They might do it and it sustains their life or whatever, but they're not making millions. You know, they're not doing it for the dollars. They're not doing it for greed or, you know, money. They must be doing it because they really need to be doing it. And I guess there's a part of me, you know, that kind of feels that same way, obviously, at this point. You know, like, I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't really want to be doing it. Like, I didn't really need to be doing it. Now, why do I need to be doing it? That's a whole separate podcast. But, you know, I don't know. I guess for me, it's just something that I'm going to be thinking about for a while. And, you know, this idea that rock and roll is dead, Yeah, forget that. It's not true. It's not true. You want to hear the real face of modern rock and roll music? Go watch the Young Gods performing back in 2019. That is the face of modern rock and roll. That's where the evolution is happening. You know, it's not happening with the Justin Biebers of the world. It's going to be happening out on the edges, out on the fringe, you know? So, there you go. Food for thought. You know, on a much more, I don't know, I guess somber note, I wanted to talk about this season that I found myself in. Over the past few months, I had a really close friend of mine, somebody that I love very, very much, attempt suicide. And oh my goodness gracious, it was so horrible, you know? And I've talked about it before in different podcasts, you know? But this friend of mine just went through a really rough patch, and didn't see a way out. You know, he couldn't find a way out. And yeah, I've talked about suicide before. Oh man, you know, it just is one of those things. Ever since I was a young kid, it just boggles my mind. And I was so shocked to hear that this person, this friend of mine, would do something like that. You know, like nobody had any idea what was going on in this dude's head, you know? And what can I say? You know, it's really something that's difficult to deal with. This notion of someone losing all hope, you know. Now, fortunately, in this situation, this friend of mine kind of came to his senses at the last minute and, you know, found some hope, found a reason to live, you know. But, like I said, nobody had any idea that this was going to happen. And it just got me to thinking about that, you know. The human mind is like an ocean, you know. For each person, there's like a whole universe in there, in that noodle, you know. And it is very, very possible that you could be sitting next to somebody and having fun and talking, and they're planning on killing themselves or something like that. They're planning on ending their life, and you would never know. Like, you would never guess by their outward appearance that they're in some kind of, you know, emotional or mental turmoil, you know? And I've spent the past couple months just kind of thinking about that, you know, like, you know, you just have no idea, right? And man, how does it get like that? How does it get there? And, you know, sometimes I wonder, I mean, I've talked about this before too, where there's like it seems to be anyway, okay, this epidemic of suicide, you know? I don't understand it. Like, I don't understand why now, in, you know, the year 2020, somebody would do that. I just don't understand it. I don't understand what brings somebody to that point. I mean, it must be really bad. It has to be some kind of, you know, spiritual crisis of some kind. I don't think it's just emotional or, you know, something like that. There has to be, in my opinion, okay, some kind of like demonic aspect to this wave of suicide that seems to be kind of taking over or coming down onto the planet right now. I mean, we live in such a strange time. It's so strange. There's so many resources for somebody who is thinking about killing themselves, or they feel that there's no hope, that they're in trouble somehow or something, and like it'll never get better. There's so many like hotlines and websites and people who are devoting their time catering to these kinds of people that are in that state. I just don't understand how or why at this point somebody could go through with it. You know, there are so many places to go for help, right? And I suppose, you know, there's really nothing more to say. I don't know. Anyway, so I guess I have to think about that a little bit more. Just kind of, brother, you know? Come on. Man. I just don't understand it, folks. Sorry, I just don't. It's something I would just never do. I mean, to go this far in life and to this, you know, end it? No. Doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, what happens to someone's sense of self-preservation? I mean, isn't that like a base instinct for human beings? I don't understand it. You know? Like, there's nobody they can turn to? There's nobody that could help them out? I don't know. I was a little upset, actually. I talked to this fella, you know, he's all better now, everything is okay. But, you know, I talked to him not too long ago on the phone, spent quite a bit of time talking to him about all this stuff, you know. And I asked him, like, why didn't you call me? You know, why didn't you reach out to me? You know me, you know, like I'm a good ear. I'll listen to you and I'll, you know, at least try to encourage you and try to help you along. I may not have all the answers, but anybody that really knows me knows that I would help them out. You know, I would listen. I'm a great bartender, you know. I have a good ear. And he told me that he was embarrassed to talk to me about it because it involved like a woman who was, you know, being unfaithful, and, you know, it was just, you know, embarrassing to him. And I was like, actually, you know, honestly, I was a little insulted by that. Like, how could you ever think that I would be like judgmental or something, or, you know, think less of you because what, some woman decided to, you know, do something like that, hurt your feelings or something like that? You think I would judge you or judge her? It's like, come on. I hope that you're like that with people around you, you know? Maybe that's part of the problem, is this communication thing, like this era we live in of social media. It's almost like anti-social media, you know? Like, and brings me back to that question, you know? How in the hell can it get so bad and there's nobody there for you to reach out to? There's nobody, okay, that can help you out, and like you kill yourself. That doesn't make any sense anymore, okay? That should not happen anymore, because there's just so much available. But man, there is a wave, an epidemic, and that's the word I'd use, an epidemic of suicide happening now in modern culture, especially here in the States. It's scary stuff. It's scary stuff. And like I said earlier, I'll say it again, in my opinion, okay, there has to be some kind of demonic element to that. That's the only thing I could think of, is that somehow these spirits, these invisible forces of nature that we don't see them. I guess sometimes people hear them. I guess sometimes people do see them too. But it's there. It's the spirit, that descends on somebody, and it just engulfs their entire life or their entire personality to the point where they just can't see the way out anymore. I don't know. It's scary. It's scary to think about. Like, these young people, so some of them are so young. They're so young. Like those stories about those young kids that are getting bullied, like online, like on Facebook or Snapchat or whatever the kids are doing these days, Twitter. They get bullied so bad that they like kill themselves over like what somebody said or what somebody thinks of them. Oh, how weird. How odd. As far as I'm concerned, there's never a reason to end it all. Come on. It's life. Life sucks sometimes. It's when you have a struggle in your life and things are going wrong, that's the character building part of your life. That's where you learn the most, when you're being tested in the fire. It's part of life. It's a very important part of life. Don't lose hope. Don't lose faith. And reach out to your friends. This buddy of mine that just recently went through this, he could have reached out to me, and he knows that. When I talked to him on the phone, he like admitted it. Oh yeah, I know, but I was embarrassed. Come on. And I suppose like all this kind of stuff is on my mind even more like today, because just recently my wife and I attended the funeral for a younger man, and I can't talk about it too much because this situation is still volatile or whatever. We don't know all the details or whatever. We're not exactly sure what happened, but it's quite possible that this younger gentleman that we just went to his funeral had committed suicide. We're not sure, so I won't talk about it anymore because it's still volatile. It's still fresh. It's still happening right now. But like I said, I don't know all the details, but I'm sitting there looking at this dude in the casket, this young guy, another young guy. What's going on in the world, folks? What's going on? You gotta start asking these questions, man. And if you're somebody, I guess, I have to say this. I have to say this. If you're somebody who's going through some kind of thing like that, what the hell, man? You got to reach out to somebody. There's got to be somebody, even if it's a complete stranger, on a suicide prevention hotline. I suppose if I would have been prepared today, I could have had a phone number or something for somebody to call. Maybe I'll put it in the description for this video or something. But what is going on in the world where these young people are doing this kind of stuff? Like 30 years old, and you're ending your life. Like, oh my gosh, when I was 30, my life hadn't even started yet. I'm serious. That's what it seems like sometimes. I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, like so much changes in 20 years or 10 years or even a year. So much can change. In a week, so much can change, right? Come on. If you're somebody who's going through something like that, come on, reach out to somebody. Don't go all the way. It's so silly and so senseless. It doesn't need to happen. there is hope. There is a place to go. There's people to turn to. There's never a reason, never a good enough reason to throw it all away. Never. Never. So, I don't know. That's all I'm going to say about that for today. But I suppose I should kind of try to give you something that's a little bit more on the happier side of life, right? Before I sign off today. So, I'm going to tell you a little story. Okay. When I was a little boy, I grew up in an area that had a car manufacturing plant not too far from where I lived. It was a Ford factory, you know, where they made Ford trucks or something. And this is just a funny little anecdote for you, okay? Before I sign off. But when I was a little kid and we would drive past this factory, okay, there was so much smoke billowing out of these gigantic smokestacks, right? And it was going into the sky that when I was little, I thought that's where clouds came from. Think about that. I used to think that the Ford plant was a cloud factory. Like that's where the clouds came that filled the sky. That's how much pollution was coming out of this thing, right? To this day, when I think about that, I just laugh. So there you go. It's not all gloom and doom today here on the Singularity Podcast. And I'm going to get back to work here, folks. I got a lot of music to do, a lot of videos to edit, and a lot of life to live, just like you do. So if you're going through a rough patch, it gets better. There's light at the end of the tunnel. And if you really are suffering some kind of emotional distress, like this buddy of mine was, you got to find somebody to reach out to. You got to. So, anyway, folks, I'm signing off here. I got to get to work. But, love ya. Have a great weekend. Stay safe. Have fun. And until next time, folks, this is Mike Bostwick from Pipe Choir Records signing off. And remember, folks, if you want to keep what you've got to give it away. Take it easy. All right, everybody. I have a song for all you happy innovators that were daring enough to stick around to the end of the podcast for some music. I have a song for you today I'm going to share called The Water of Fire or Singing to the Sea. 2 titles. When I made the song, okay, when I was writing it and recording it, I kind of knew that I wanted to call the song The Water of Fire. But as the song started to emerge and I started to make up lyrics and words were coming to me and the music was kind of like coming to me, I liked the idea of calling the song Singing to the Sea. So when the song was finished, I had to make a decision, like, okay, which title do I want to go with? And then the idea occurred to me that I don't have to choose. I can do whatever I want. So I decided that I would keep both titles. So there you go. The Water of Fire or Singing to the Sea. You can choose which title you like, by the way. So that was kind of the idea. Like the audience would choose what they want to call it. But Anyway, I'll tell you a little bit about the song itself. Let's see, what do I remember about the water of fire or singing to the sea? Well, okay, the very first thing I did, I remember this. This is before I used what they call a click track. I hadn't figured that out yet. A click track is like a metronome that you play to, and it helps you to stay in time, okay? And this song was written and recorded before I knew how to do that. So what I did was I just recorded myself playing my drums, and I took a chunk of that drumming and I looped it. I had it repeat itself so that the drum beat just kept going. And I just started to kind of add music. I started to just go with it, wherever the music took me. And I wound up having a longer piece of music. And I would say that this was kind of like the lead up. Okay, this song, The Water of Fire or Singing to the Sea, was the lead up to the idea of going outside of the normal song length, like 3 minutes or 5 minutes. I think The Water of Fire is like 8 minutes long. And, it was kind of a fun experiment to just kind of see where it took me and see how it worked, and if it would be the kind of thing that you could listen to for 8 minutes without going crazy and turning it off. And of course, it turned out pretty good. And that then led me to the idea of, okay, now I'm going to do a song that's 15 minutes or 20 minutes long. And that song will probably be played in the next podcast. But for this one, you get The Water of Fire or Singing to the Sea, this song that kind of got me started on this notion of stretching the music, stretching songs out longer than the conventional length. So it was my first breakaway from that. It wasn't really like a conscious effort. I didn't really know what I was doing. It was more of a experiment, playing with time. So here it is, folks. I hope you like it. Have a great weekend, and I'll be talking to you soon. Peace out, everybody.
almost completely free of errors.